BBC News at midday. The global shipping industry has agreed to reduce carbon emissions to net zero by or around 2050. 175 countries who are members of the International Maritime Organization agreed the target at a meeting in London. Ships currently produce about 3% of global CO2. That's about the same amount as Germany. Green groups say the strategy is weak and will do little to limit rising temperatures. Our environment correspondent Matt McGrath has more details.
Shipping is very complicated. Lots of countries have flags of convenience. Ships are owned in some countries and registered in others. So when the Paris Agreement was put together in 2015, shipping was one of the areas that was actually excluded. They have put in place some targets over the last number of years, not very high targets. So this meeting in London this week is seen as critical in strengthening those targets, and the countries, 175 of them, have agreed on this net zero by or around 2050.
There's disruption at schools across England as thousands of teachers go on strike for the second time this week. Members of the National Education Union, along with 3 other teaching unions, are locked in a dispute with the government about pay. They've rejected the latest offer, which included a rise of 4.3% for most teachers. A report by the independent pay review body, which hasn't yet been published, has reportedly recommended an increase of 6.5% for next year. Ministers say they need to be fair to taxpayers as well as teachers. Israel's military says its forces have killed 2 Palestinians suspected of carrying out an attack against Israeli police earlier this week. Officials said the 2 men died in an exchange of fire during a raid in Nablus in the occupied West Bank. Our correspondent Tom Bateman sent this report from Jerusalem.
Israeli troops surrounded a house in Nablus's Old City, where locals report hearing heavy gunfire. They killed 2 Palestinians inside. The army says they were wanted militants who shot at their forces before they could detain them. It saw soldiers enter, then leave the city in jeep convoys, matching a pattern of raids that have become routine in the occupied West Bank over this last year, and distinct from this week's massive military assault involving drone strikes into Jenin refugee camp.
The Scottish government has called for all drugs to be decriminalised when they're for personal use. The announcement was made by the Minister for Drugs Policy in Edinburgh, Eleanor Whitman, at an event in the city this morning. She said she wanted the government in Westminster to change the law so those found in possession of drugs could be treated rather than criminalised. President Zelensky has renewed his appeals for more long-range weapons to be sent to Ukraine during a visit to the Czech Republic. He's on a whistle-stop tour of Western nations ahead of a NATO meeting in Lithuania next week. Danny Eberhard reports.
President Zelensky aims, with this diplomatic offensive, to secure more weapons, but also to drive forward Ukraine's objectives of joining both the European Union and NATO. He wants a concrete political signal from NATO members at its upcoming summit in Lithuania that Ukraine will be allowed to join the alliance once fighting with Russia stops. The Czech Prime Minister Petr Fiala reiterated his country's backing. Some states, though, are more wary. Later today, Mr. Zelensky will be in Turkey. He's expected to urge President Erdogan to switch stance and back Sweden's application to join NATO.
Production of the UK's most popular car, the Ford Fiesta, will end today when the final model rolls off a factory line in Germany. Following its introduction in 1976, there are still 1.5 million Fiestas on British roads, more than any other car. The site in Cologne, where they're built, is being modified to make more room for electric vehicles. Cricket and England have lost 2 wickets on day 2 of the 3rd Ashes Test against Australia at Headingley. They're currently 102 for 5, chasing Australia's first innings total of 263. BBC News.